He told himself he had a reason to leave, that watching her fade, piece by piece, was something no one could handle, that it was better to remember her the way she used to be, strong, certain, always there. So when the calls became more frequent, when the updates turned from concern into quiet urgency, he stopped answering, not all at once, but slowly. One missed call became 2, then weeks, then silence, and eventually, distance felt easier than truth, but the truth never really left him. It stayed in the small things, in the way he avoided certain songs she used to hum while cooking, in the way he paused every time he saw someone her age, wondering if they looked as lost as she might be now. And most of all, it stayed in the memory of the day she first called him her son, not because she had to, but because she chose to. He hadn't always had a place to belong. Before her, life felt uncertain, temporary, moving from one space to another, never quite settling, never quite feeling wanted. But she had changed that. She didn't ask for anything in return. She just showed up, day after day, meal after meal. Quiet moments that slowly built something real. And when she started forgetting things, he told himself it would pass. At first, it was small, misplaced keys, repeating the same question twice, laughing it off like it didn't matter. But then it grew. She began forgetting names, faces, even moments they had just shared. There were days she would look at him, confused, searching for something that wasn't there anymore. That was the part he couldn't face. The moment her eyes no longer recognized him felt like something breaking inside his chest. And instead of staying, instead of holding on to what was left, he chose to step away. He told himself he needed space, time. But deep down, it wasn't about needing space. It was about not wanting to feel that loss over and over again. Call came on a quiet afternoon, a number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it, almost let it ring until it stopped, like he had done so many times before. But something made him answer. Voice on the other end was calm, professional. Caregiver. He's been asking for you, the woman said gently. Not every day, but enough that I thought you should know. His grip tightened around the phone. Does she remember me? He asked, his voice lower than usual. There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. Some days she does, the caregiver replied. Some days she doesn't. That answer stayed with him long after the call ended. He sat there, staring at nothing, his mind pulling him in two directions. One telling him to keep moving forward, to leave the past where it was. The other, reminding him of everything he had left behind. That night, he didn't sleep. Every memory came back clearer than it had in years. Her voice. Her laughter. The way she stood by him when no one else did. The one thing he couldn't ignore anymore was that she had never walked away from him. Not once. By morning, the decision didn't feel like a choice anymore. It felt like something he should have done a long time ago. And for the first time in years, he turned back toward the place he once called home. The drive felt longer than it should have. Every mile carried a weight he couldn't ignore, like the road itself was forcing him to face everything he had avoided. Familiar streets slowly came into view, places he once knew without thinking. But now, everything felt different. Not because the town had changed, but because he had. When he finally pulled up in front of the house, he didn't get out right away. He sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the front door. Paint was worn, the garden overgrown. But it was still the same place. The same house where she had opened the door for him years ago without hesitation. Where she had made space for him when he had nowhere else to go. Now, he wasn't sure if that door would open the same way. He stepped out slowly, each movement careful, like he was walking into something fragile. The air felt still, almost too quiet. He made his way to the door and knocked. Echoed more than he expected, sharp against the silence. A few moments later, the door opened. A woman he didn't recognize stood there. Calm, professional, kind in a quiet way. She introduced herself as the caregiver and stepped aside, letting him in without asking too many questions. It was like she already knew who he was. Inside, everything looked smaller than he remembered. The furniture was the same, but worn. The walls held the same pictures, but the colors had faded. Time had passed through this place slowly, leaving marks on everything. He walked carefully, his eyes moving from one memory to another. The kitchen where she used to cook, the chair where she would sit in the evenings. Every corner felt familiar, and distant at the same time. She's in the living room, the caregiver said softly. His steps slowed. This was it. He moved forward, his chest tightening with every step, and then he saw her. She was sitting by the window, her hands resting gently in her lap, her gaze fixed somewhere outside. Sunlight touched her face, but it didn't bring the same warmth he remembered. She looked smaller now, quieter, like time had taken pieces of her and carried them away. Stood there for a moment, unable to move. Then she turned her head slightly, noticing his presence. Their eyes met. He waited. For recognition. For something to show that she knew him, that he hadn't lost everything. But her expression stayed soft and unfamiliar. "Can I help you?" she asked gently. The words didn't sound harsh. They weren't meant to hurt. He did. He felt it instantly, like something breaking deep inside him. This was the moment he had been running from. The moment he thought he couldn't handle. And now it was right in front of him. He tried to speak, but his voice didn't come out the way he expected. "It's me," he said quietly. I'm your son. Word felt heavy as it left his mouth. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face, trying to find something familiar. For a second, there was almost something there. Flicker. A connection trying to form. Then it faded. I'm sorry, she said softly. I don't remember. The room felt still again. Nodded slowly, even though the weight of it all pressed harder than he expected. It wasn't something he could fix with words. It wasn't something he could undo. But for the first time, he didn't turn away. Instead, he stepped closer. Because leaving again wasn't an option anymore. The first few days felt unfamiliar, like stepping into a life that had moved on without him. He didn't know where to stand, what to say, or how to act around her anymore. Everything that once felt natural now required thought. He stayed, because it was easy, but because leaving again would have been harder to live with. He started small, sitting in the same room while she looked out the window, helping the caregiver with simple tasks, speaking to her, even when she didn't respond the way she used to. At first, it felt one-sided, like he was reaching for something that wasn't there. But slowly, he realized something important. It wasn't about getting something back. It was about giving what he once received, that he hadn't lost everything. Her expression stayed soft and unfamiliar. Can I help you? She asked gently. Words didn't sound harsh. They weren't meant to hurt. There were moments when she would look at him and smile, not out of recognition, but out of kindness. Same kindness she had always shown him. Those moments didn't last long, but they were enough to keep him there. Enough to remind him that something still existed between them, even if it didn't have a name anymore. One afternoon, he found himself in the kitchen, standing in the exact spot where she used to cook for him. The memory was clear, her voice, her laughter, the way she would call him in when the food was ready. He rested his hands on the counter, closing his eyes for a second. Back then, he hadn't thought about how much those moments mattered. Now, they felt like everything. Later that day, he brought her a cup of tea and sat beside her. She looked at him, studying his face again, like she had done before. This time, there was no pressure in his chest, no expectation. Do you live here? She asked softly. He gave a small smile. I used to, he replied. She nodded slowly, as if that answer made sense in a way she couldn't fully explain. Then she looked back out the window. It passed quietly. Then, without warning, she reached for his hand. The movement was gentle, almost uncertain, but her grip settled quickly. It wasn't strong, but it was real. He looked down at their hands, feeling something shift inside him. This wasn't about memory. It wasn't about recognition. It was about connection. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. After a moment, she turned her head slightly toward him. Her eyes looked clearer than they had before, like something had come into focus, even if just for a second. You came back, she said softly. The words were simple, barely above a whisper. It carried everything. His throat tightened, and for a moment, he couldn't respond. Not because he didn't have words, but because none of them felt enough. I did, he finally said. She gave a small nod, her hand still holding his. In that quiet moment, he understood something he hadn't before. She might not remember his name every day. He might not recall the years they shared. But somewhere, in a place untouched by memory, she knew one thing. He was there. And this time, he wasn't leaving.